and spend the whole week bringing it into the home, bringing it into the makom hatfilah, bringing it into the Torah learning. How many people do that? The Pilzno even wrote up a sefer on it. B'nei machshava tova. How many people do that? Today, Baruch Hashem, there are a number by Ger, for example, by Bells. They have vadim. They do have vadim. It's very nice. They learn some Torah and they have Baruch Hashem. But by the Pilzno, the defined avodah that they would have, it's unbelievable. I was zeicha that in Bnei Brak, I met a couple of the Talmidim. There was a couple of people who were by these vadim. They were in this vadim. I learned by somebody who, it relates to another segment of my family that had these Khaburras as well. So you have, for example, somebody called Rabbi Isaac Shapiro, Zichron Bracha. He was nifta about 7 years ago. We went together to him on the Moshav. You remember when we picked up the grass? Remember we picked up the grass from his grandson? He helped me schlep it? No. So Rabbi Isaac Shapiro, he lived on one of the Moshavim about 10 minutes from here. And he was one of the tzaddikim. He was one of the tzaddikim. He died at 106 years old. And he was in Warsaw. And he is well learned by another side of my family. He was by the Pilzno. He spent time by the Pilzno. And as well by Ropshitz, Rab Naftali Tzvi of Ropshitz. He had Khaburras. The Ropshitzer, they were very makbedach, Khaburras, small Khaburras that they had every week. And they would work through a sefer. And as they were working through the sefer, they would be having and practicing targilim and hanhagos. They would be practicing practices. And again, they would take those practices through their tefillot. They would pump what they had been learning. Through their learning, they would pump what they'd been learning. In the house, they would be pumping all the activities that they'd been practicing and learning in the Khaburra, as a husband, as a parent, as a wife. That was the language that they'll be speaking. So Rabbi Isaac Shapiro, for example, he was by one of the Khaburras, by the Ateres Yeshua, Rabbi Yeshua Mijikov, who was a great-grandson. So Rabbi Isaac Shapiro was by the Khaburra, and as well, I think at the moment, Rav Shalom Shachar has it, there's a book in English, what's it called in English, by Menachem Eckstein, A Vision of a Compassionate World. Seen this book before? It's a translation, you know what I'm talking about, yeah? The Vision of a Compassionate World. It's a translation from a Hebrew sefer. This Yid, his name was Rabbi Menachem Eckstein, he was young when he wrote in his 20s. So Rabbi Isaac Shapiro knew him. They were by Rabbi Eckstein. Rabbi Menachem's father was a Rav, who was a Jikov Chassid. And in his town, he as well had a Khaburra. And they had very defined halot, very defined hanhogas. They would be practicing visualizations. They'll be practicing recognizing what they would want throughout that year. You look at the second piece in the Pilzno, in the second sefer, the second piece at the end, he's got a kuntras, like a diary, beautiful. He writes that a person, you have to ask yourself, how do you want to look? How do you want your life to look when you're 70 years old? When you're 70 years old, how do you want your life to look? It's not going to happen by itself if you want it to be a defined, spiritually elevated and expanded life. So, these Khaburras, we're going to build from week to week. We're going to go through work. We're going to take a text. I have to, what I've done, I have on my computer the mahalach that I've used for over 15 years. We've been doing this for over 15 years. This particular group, we've been discussing, you've got the nefesh, you've got the ruach, and you've got the neshama. The nefesh is the lower self where all the midos are. And we have within that the avodah of cheshbon ha-nefesh. So these Khaburras are more directed at being metaken, fixing up the nefesh. Cheshbon ha-nefesh. That's really where we're going. So what it would look like, the first Khaburra that we'll do, Be'ezras Hashem, next week, is we're going to speak about das, because that's where we start from. That's the default setting. And then we write we will write what we understand of it, and then we will share it to help everybody understand it to a clearer perspective. And it's not a matter of wrong, right, good, bad. It's growth. The next Khaburra, when we finish that avodah, is the avodah of the Arba Yesodot, which is understanding the importance of guidance, understanding the relevance of feeding your mind good material, the relevance of having community and friends, and the importance of financial and physical health. So then we will write down, where am I between 1 and 10? Where am I with guidance? Where am I with knowledge? Most people don't learn that much, or they don't fill their mind up. They're not, they're not feeding their mind. They may have a seder here and there. How conscious is their seder? Even if it's every day, how conscious is it? How many books do you read a month? What information are you feeding yourself with? So, for example, we take on to try and read one book a month. We've got every day, maybe we're learning a halacha and a gemara. To find time to educate ourselves in regards to relationships. So some of you already know there's an importance to ring people up, to be in touch with people. Why do you ring someone up? To say hi. So many times I've picked up the phone and, hi, how you doing? And then before I put the phone down, I hear this voice, did you want something? I said, no, just to say hello. And this fulfills the Pirkei Avos. What does it say in the Pirkei Avos? Kaine lecha chaver. What is kaine lecha chaver? Kaine, the Pilzno Arba says, is a lashon of kinyan. Kinyan is bringing into existence. Kaine lecha chaver is that I brought my fellow into existence. So what does that look like? It wasn't the person's birthday. It wasn't an anniversary. I called a person up stum to say hello because I was thinking of them. Think about it for a moment. What's this really, really devastating, something so devastating? It's when someone's ignored, when somebody's ignored. It's not nice. What's the most unbelievable feeling? When I'm walking down the street and I pick up the phone, so call up Freddie, how you doing? Just thinking of you, I just wanted to say hi. And then what feels really good is when he calls me up. Says, hi, how you doing? Yeah, good, saying hi to you. Sometimes it doesn't have to be anything else. You brought someone into existence. How's the relationships with the spouse, with the children, with parents? So these questions need to be asked. They need to be explored. Financial and physical health. The exploration of financial and physical health. Where am I? Between 1 and 10. Financially, where am I right now? Physically, where am I right now? And usually we always find what holds us back and what we need to deal with. Usually fears hold us back. The sense of disbelief. I was told I can't do it. It's an amazing thing. I was speaking to somebody who, a couple of days ago, we did a little presentation, a business presentation online. Ideas about wealth and money and things like that. And we were speaking about this idea, how so many people are in a matzav where they're living other people's reality in regards to money. So sometimes we can hear, can't afford it, no, can't afford it. Or, people, money is the root of all evil. People sometimes say that. Or, rich people, they're unhappy. They've got more to worry about. We have so many language patterns that we use, which goes against generating a healthy relationship with money and with wealth. So it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. How many times I've heard people say, wealthy people, or money doesn't make you happy. Money doesn't make you happy. Maybe it doesn't make you happy, but it sure well helps. So
It may not make you happy, but lack of money sure doesn't make you happy.
yeah. So it's like we live a life where we've been programmed and we say things and we have to ask ourselves, well, who just said that? If I have a voice in my mind that says, money doesn't make you happy, whose voice is that? Where's that coming from? Does that work in my life?
There's a story about the Babich Rebbe who was having a Fabrengen, and he asked, the Hasidim in 770, full packed house as usual, who wants to be rich? Right? It's not the most common concept for a chas to want to be rich, and nobody raised their hands. And he said, "No, why not? Who wants to be rich? Be real with yourself." And I think 4 or 5 people raised their hand in the end out of the 1,000 people who were in the hall. In the end, those 4 or 5 people, all of them became millionaires. Every single one of them became wealthy. From what I know, they were all pretty happy as well because, he explained during the same Fabrengen, they don't need to use the money on themselves. The happiness may not come from the money, but the meisim can bring a person to happiness, and they're able to do more meisim from it.
To have wealth is fantastic. I think one of those people is Mr. Gutnik. I think there's a whole story with the dollar. I think that was Mr. Gutnik, Shlita. One of those people who's very wealthy Chabadnik. But the reality is that we have to ask ourselves, whose voices are playing off in our head in regards to different areas of our lives? So when we discuss, for example, Das and the Arba Yesodot, and then we move on, we make goals for the year. We write a list of 10 nakudot that are very important to us. And then we ask how I feel about it, and we ask what are the actions. When we have priorities, when we have something to work on, and we're doing it together, life looks very different. Life looks very, very different. How many people would love to be more focused in many areas of their life, but they forget? We just forget. We don't mean to be rude. We don't mean to forget things. We don't mean not to be present, but we forget. So these Khaburras, from generation to generation, by the Ropshitzer, by the Musa movement, the Musavad, they were a group of people that would come together either weekly, every 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll come together weekly, Be'ezras Hashem. And they would make definite, conscious change to their lives. And think about those benefits. Think about the benefits of having a Khaburah. Think about the benefits of having a group of people, especially if you daven with them, if you live close to them, if you see them, and you're working on something, and you're taking that home, and you're taking it to other areas of your life. What are the benefits of that if it's a good, healthy group? First of all, the intimacy that's developed is unbelievable. Like whoever chooses to stay, when we come to daven, and we are meeting once a week, and this was so important by the Jikafa, this was so important that Teres Yeshua was very makbid on this, that he would have his Khaburras, and all those Khaburras, they would actually sit near each other in the Beis HaMedrash when they davened. Because everyone knew what they were davening for. They would help each other, they'll give that wink. But when you have something to focus on throughout your week, and then you bring it back, we're expanding and contracting. We're coming here, and we're writing things out, and we're finding things out about ourselves, and then we share it with each other. And we have a notebook, a diary, which is very, very, very important. So your life is a very different life. Your life is a very, very different life. And then we start, for example, to fulfill the Hasidic stories. We hear these Hasidic stories, and there's such depth to them. One of them that comes to mind is about Reb Zusha. Reb Zusha Vanipoli. Reb Zusha once was crying, and he'd always speak about himself in the third party. He would never say I. He would say Reb Zusha. And he was heard saying, Rabbanu Shalaylam, Reb Zusha is not worried that when Reb Zusha goes up to Shamayim, Hashem's going to ask Zusha, why weren't you Avram Avinu? Why weren't you Yitzchak? Why weren't you Moshe? But Reb Zusha is very scared that Hashem is going to say, why weren't you Reb Zusha? How many people live a life when they're looking at the other person? How many people live a life where they have this mindset that the grass is greener on the other side? How many people live a life like that? That person has it better. I work with so many couples and I always hear, I don't understand. That couple has it much better, especially if I'm sitting with my wife and this couple is talking. Many times, they've brought other people. Oh, this couple? Why can't my husband be like her? But my wife laughs. Says, oh, you don't want that. You don't know what's going on in their home. You don't know what's going on in their home. When you're working within a Khaburra and you have a mahalach of working, life, instead of being looked at as what the neighbors have, living up to the Joneses, you start to become an Adam, and hopefully a Ben Torah, where it's not about the natural impulses that push us along. It becomes about a higher functioning of living. That you look at yourself and wherever you go and whatever you do. So for example, I'll give you a prime example. One of the Khaburras this week, we're working, or it's actually been since before Yom Tov, on humor. On humor, to laugh. So one of the Chevra, he works in a company, non-Jewish, this is in England, a non-Jewish company. He prepares 2-3 jokes a week. And they have a board meeting, and at the beginning of their board meeting, it doesn't start with him telling over his joke. Now, what's really funny about this guy is he's the biggest yekker you'll ever meet. He hardly smiles, and I think when he tells, I can't even do it, when he tells, okay, we have to start with the joke. And he tells this joke in this monotone way, and everyone laughs at him as well as his joke. But he's brought this avodah to work with him. He's brought this avodah to work. When you work on, for example, having Kabbalahs with your children, taking on a Kabbalah, taking something on with your children. So one of the children, right now, my daughter Leah, is answering Amen to a bracha. She knows right now we don't make we don't eat, we don't make a bracha. One of my sons, my Yaakov, is standing up for each other. You take on a Kabbalah. You take something on. Now, what gets in the way? It's very important to understand what gets in the way. It's very easy what gets in the way. You know what gets in the way? Gaiva. What's Gaiva? Gaiva is cynicism. Gaiva is skepticism. Gaiva is sarcasm. Gaiva is, they're going to think this looks stupid. All the fears and insecurities, that's what holds a person back from achieving the success of happiness and joyfulness. It's crazy. And some people, they live a life where they are held back because of these things. So we have to choose, using our bechira. What is important to us? Is it important to us, or is it not important to us? What am I more bothered about? And at first, it may be challenging for a lot of parents, believe it or not, to speak to their children about taking something on with each other for themselves. Do you know how so many parents find it embarrassing? They find it weird. They find it strange. One of the guys in the English group who I'm going to see next week, he's the Rosh of the Khaburra that it's been going on for, I think, 13 years now. They meet every 2 weeks, and they have a Melava Malka. And when I came here, every week we would meet on Skype, Melava Malka Torah. He's in his 60s. When he started 13 years ago, he was, not much younger. He was younger, but not much younger. All his children were older when we started the Khaburras. One day, round the Shabbos table, for those kids that were at home, he says, that's it. We're all taking something on. This week, we're all working on this midah. The kids thought he's gone nuts. What's even stranger, in regards of his behavior, he called up his married kids. And he says to his married kids, that's it. We're working on this. I'm speaking to you every other day, and this is what we're working on, just between us. Every child he had a Kabbalah. He took something on. One of his kids is completely secular. They had what they're working on still today. On Shabbos, the house is a lot quieter now. I think he's got one kid left at home. They have him and his wife, and what the kid is forced to work on. But it changed the dynamic of the whole home. Changed the dynamic of the whole home. The Musavads by the Musa movement. An amazing thing about them? A number of the Musavads that were run by certain Gedolei Yisrael, within those Musavads there were people who were not frum. People who were not frum. Still today I know several Musavads that go on, and there's non-frum people, mamash. They come. Because it's their way of connecting, and they were encouraged to come. So our goal is to move from the darga of Behema, to come to the darga of Adam, and hopefully to the darga of a Ben Torah. To work on ourselves in a very practical and real manner, to take things on, to write things down. So next week, it's very, very important you come with a good pen, and you come with a notepad. I hope that I will hand things out to you as well. Each week we'll go through something that's in a certain order. It may take more than 1 or 2 weeks, and we've got time. We have time, we're not in a rush. The notepad, the notebook, is mamash, be all and end all. It's very, 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 very important to have a diary. I've got several diaries. To have a diary where you journal, you write things in, it gives you a sense of where you're going. Now it could be you will just fill up the diary here. It's okay. If you take the avodah more seriously, it could be maybe you take it shacharis and put a line or two in every day. That's okay. There's no rights or wrong. We're going to be sharing, and the commitment of growth is up to you. But what I can assure you of is that if you keep to it and if we work through it together, it's very powerful. Very, very powerful.
Won't be recorded, correct?
We're not going to be recording it. We'll see. Maybe we'll record part of it, maybe we won't. But I don't think it will need to be recorded. We'll have to wait and see what happens. And as we said, the goal is to come to a place where we get up in the morning and mean it, and we walk through our day and mean it, feeling a sense of control, having that flexibility, having a focal point, lessening the clutter in our mind. And as we said, we're not working necessarily on das, yet das is really underpinning everything. We're going to be working on cheshbon hanefesh. It's the lower part of the soul, where we're going to be taking practical things on. We're going to be writing out and expanding in written text. And as well, I will encourage all of you, for those who are in the Chabur, it could be more people will come next week. It's not something that 1 week I come and 1 week the more we're determined to make our lives impressive for ourselves and our spouses and our families, we turn up. We turn up. So Be'ezras Hashem. What I wanted to do, what's the time now?
9:22.
What I wanted to do is just end off, read, I've got a Tehillim. Just to end off, maybe come a little bit closer, just to end off, to read Mechalek the Tehillim that we have over here, and just end up with a Tehillim to daven to the Rabbanu Shalom that we should have Hatzlach in everything that we do. And we won't get through the whole Sefer Tehillim. Everyone takes one until Mariv to prepare ourselves. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, are we a little bit aware of what we're going to expect here? Yeah? And I would like to tell you as well, I'd just like to tell you as well that you have a lot of input in this. You have a lot of input in this. So Be'ezras Hashem, together. It's not one way in the highway, we work together on this. So Be'ezras Hashem, let's read a couple of Pitlach of Tehillim. We should have Hatzlacha, we should build in a healthy, wondrous and fantastic way. Say them. Okay? No questions. No questions? Okay. LeDavid Adonai u'vishim Adonai u'machayim v'ashna b'chalim matzanim alai chayim atzawa v'aloya imivi im takum alav milchama v'zois ani b'tayach achav sha'alti me'eis Adonai ha'isa avakesh shifti b'veis Adonai kol yemei chayai Adonai hakesh v'masav matatakum Hashem yashanim olav ביקשו פניו ודם עדיין בכל מעשה ורמבה היו יכולים להיות על מי שיכולים אני לבוא אדוני דרכך צורכני וגדול ומעשם שלי מרתם אלי בוא היו יכולים מעשה שיכנה לבדך קבל אדוני חזר שימס ליבך וקבל אדוני אלך אדוני קצור אלך כל מעשה שיכנה לבדך מעשה שיכנה לבדך מעשה למדך אדוני זה מגיע וכי וזר בעולם שיכנה לבדך שהסמך רבש ולך מעשה מזמן לדעת ידבו לאדוני בני אלים עבוד מית בו ולא נגוד Mazar Shikhan Mazar Shikhan Mazar Shalom Mizma Ushim Khan Kasaba Yisro Shikhan Shikhan Mazar Adonai Khan Mazar Shikhan Baba Dayaya Shikhan Mazar Shikhan Man Smodeh Khan Masah Moshe Baba Sorry, my son is coming. My son coming. I'm going to kill a tower. I'm going to come again. I'm going to go. I'm going to keep some. I'm going to
Let's give an official invite. There's no time definition on going. So people walk from the names.
We have to tell them about the Mariv as well. Did you heard about the Mariv?
You and I have been talking about that more for about
So we
3
wrote
weeks
out,
to a month
we
now.
wrote it out, we wrote everything out.
Yeah.
We're doing a more meditative Mariv once a month. It's probably going to be this Thursday.
Same time?
It's going to be after 9:30 Mariv. It's going to be a minute more.
What time?
10 to 10.
Sean this week. It's been a while since we've done Sean.
How long will it last?
Probably 20 minutes.
It'll be 20 minutes, no? It'll still be 20 minutes to get
That's it?
one match to lose.
Yeah, 20, 25 minutes.
It's like a regular man.
No, I don't.
So Be'ezras Hashem next week 8:15 to 9:30. Please bring pad and paper. And pad and paper, pad and pen.
Pen and paper.
And as well, be aware, everyone is invited this Thursday, 10 minutes to 10. We have to announce it. 10 minutes to 10, we're going to be doing a more meditative mariv, a deeper, more connected mariv. So somehow we will be in touch with everyone. But 10 minutes to 10 this Thursday. Be'ezras Hashem is bar.
Well, with Sean in my place.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get my hand
And I
jacket.
make very yummy Sean.
Because people aren't back from work. A lot of people are not back from work.
I came here straight from work. I would not
Hello.
I would not be thrilled to miss that.